Welcome, welcome, Cleveland Browns fans near and far. My name is Joe Mazzulo, and that's my man Pete Smith, and this is the Pete and Joe Show presented by the OBR Streaming Network. If you guys get the chance, check out OBR.com for exclusive access to the insider forums, like Ask the Insiders with Lane Atkins. You get college football recruiting and transfer portal drama, all from across the 247 Sports Network, and you get access to Paramount Plus once you renew either your monthly or yearly membership. Pete, good to see you, my man. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good because I didn't have to put you on waivers because your stuff works today. So that is awesome right off the bat.
You know, I'll tell you what, Pete, Shadur Sanders isn't the only one that needs a little time with things, okay? So if we can put on our patience cap, we'll be able to get through this. We'll be okay.
The thing that strikes me as so funny about today is these guys get press conferences for like making the team, and I'm sitting there going, listen, the guy could be gone tomorrow. As you know, you go from the initial 53 to you're going to get waiver claims to a whole bunch of other stuff's got to process out, and then boom, some of these guys could be gone. Notably, the guy that jumps out to me immediately is the kicker, Andre Schmidt. I don't know how safe he is right off the bat, but hey, he got a nice long press conference to talk about it.
Yeah. You always like that. I mean, I feel like you got to look at a guy like Brandon Bates, you know, who's got pretty light hold on that 4 tight end spot. Only carrying 2 running backs is very interesting to me. I almost refuse to believe they'll go into Cincinnati with that, but I mean, you know, we got plenty of time to shake that out and figure out all that stuff. Any surprises, either positive or disappointing for you for these cuts?
I don't know if anything was surprising. It was just sort of like, it was this year more than the last couple has been more wide open, trying to make decisions sort of with the young guys that they've sort of been collecting in terms of undrafted free agents. And particularly this year, they got a whole bunch of rookies, and then weighing those against some of the guys they've had around for a little while or veterans that they've sort of hung on to. So I don't know. I mean, look, I nailed the defensive line, so I'm happy about that. DB was the one where I felt like anything could happen. And even as I look at the names right now, I could see that completely upended in a matter of a day or two. Yeah. I was a little surprised by the tight ends, simply that they kept 4. I had projected 2. And that's not because I don't think Blake Whiteheart is good or that Brendan Bates isn't a useful tight end. My calculation was basically that the Browns would waive both of them, confident that they'd get both back on the practice squad and then be able to, or at least one of them back on the practice squad and be able to sort of operate. Yeah. The impression I'm getting is that they like Whiteheart better, but because of the injury he suffered, in the last preseason game, that they've got a little insurance there. So maybe that will change a little bit. I mean, given what we saw in terms, and this could all change. I mean, the thing that popped out when you saw a bunch of tight ends get released today was there a bunch of sort of receiving tight ends. I think the Browns desperately want that third guy to be an inline guy. I like Greg Dulcich is one that stands out to me, but you can't have a tight end room that is David Njoku, Harold Fannin, and Greg Dulcich. When 2 of those guys, Greg Dulcich can't block at all, and Harold Fannin's not very good at it. Not that he doesn't want to be a good blocker, but he's just short, and it's really tough to do that. So I do think they want that guy to be a Y. So I was a little surprised that they kept 4. That part, you know, I think that will sort itself out, and then the trade for KT Levinson is interesting. That obviously I didn't see that coming. So that's the other one that sort of jumps out to me. I understand the move. The Browns are dealing with understand the reality they are in, which is outside of DeJuan Jones, you have 4 guys who are 30, who you expect to start. And you've got Cornelius Lucas, who is a very good professional tackle, who's also old. Yeah. And so after DeJuan Jones, you've got Luke Whippler, who looks great as a backup center. You've got Zach Zinter, who you drafted last year. We'll see where that goes. And then you've got Tevin Jenkins, who's really interesting. He's one of those guys where you sort of have to take him year to year because of his injury history. So just looking at it, you sit there and go, the Browns have a real, potential situation where they're replacing 3 linemen in one offseason. I don't think it's really going to work out that way, but you've got to get somebody in here who's younger. So getting a guy like KT Leviston for, a 7th-round pick, which is going to come up at some point, eventually, 2028. He's younger and gives you a body to work with.
Yeah. Well, and he's got a lot of versatility to him, right? Little inside-outside action. He can play tackle. He can swing into guard.
Well, he played left tackle at Kansas State, and everybody thought because he wasn't particularly agile that he'd kick inside and play guard because he just didn't have a whole lot of range. And yet the Rams drafted him, and he missed his whole first season with an ankle injury. And then this preseason, he's been playing left tackle. So the Browns announced him as a tackle. I don't think he fits the style of guard that the Browns want. So, in a lot of ways, he bears some resemblance to DeJuan Jones in terms of he's a good pass protector, and his way of winning a pass protection is you're not going to have a whole lot of luck going through him, at least from a collegiate standpoint. He was just too big. And going around him is difficult because he's just so wide and has really long arms that he's eventually going to sort of be able to get you past the quarterback. The difference is, one, he's nowhere near as big as DeJuan Jones, and he's a way more aggressive run blocker. He's a bulldozer type. And if you watch Kansas State, it was him and the left guard that ended up being drafted by the Cowboys, who I believe they moved into center, and they just ran behind those two guys constantly. And, there's a clip floating around social media where KT Leviston the Browns absolutely destroy the running play.
Yeah. But he walked Shoyinka back into the safety position.
Back to Florida on that play, and you're just going, look,
I get it.
That reminds you of you see the high school recruit. He gets recruited based on one clip. Yeah. Like that was the clip where you go, I want to know more about that kid. So I get it.
Okay. All right. Well, before we dive into the rosters and obviously start with the quarterback position, I want to give a quick shout out to Jeff Lloyd. Jeff Lloyd's got Browns 3D weekdays at 6 p.m. on the OBR streaming network. He does a phenomenal job. He's a solo one-man show. I can't even put into words the level of challenging that is, and he rips it every day. So props to Jeff, and be sure to check him out. Now, Pete, everybody's talking about the quarterback position for the Browns, and obviously the Pickett trade. Gabriel's elevated to number 2. Flacco's the starter, and then all the nonsense surrounding Shedeur right now. I would love for you to unpack some of that for us and what your thoughts are on that.
Well, let's start with the trade. Mm-hmm. I thought the Browns were perfectly willing to go into the season with Kenny Pickett. They got an offer. I personally, I don't think they could refuse for 3 reasons. One, they recouped the price they paid to get him in the first place. 2, it gave him a roster spot, which I can't overstate how valuable that is with the 5th-round pick. And the 3, it gives your quarterback room a clear direction on which way it's going. Those are all good things. And here's the thing. I don't rule out the possibility that Kenny Pickett will not be back at some point. The Browns really did like him.
Yeah, I don't either.
If there's a world where, the Browns, draft a quarterback next season, maybe they trade one of the young guys somewhere. In that case, probably Shedeur Sanders in that scenario, but not to say I'm trying to kick him out the door, but you could see a scenario where they do that and they say, we want to bring in another veteran.
Yeah.
Kenny Pickett was great as a teammate. They liked having him in the locker room. They like his style. He fits the style that Kevin Stefanski likes, and they were really excited about what they thought he could become. And I'm glad this did not stop them from trading him, that they didn't sort of chase good money after bad in that sense. And that's not to say I totally understand why they made the trade, even though I hated giving up a 5th-round pick for it. So in that sense, I'm glad Andrew Berry sort of apologized to me with getting a 5th-round pick. But
he was right to do so.
I'm fine with the thought process that we believe Kenny Pickett could be more than he was with the Steelers. So I don't hate any of that. And I was honestly surprised they got the 5th round pick for him, because I'm sitting here watching quarterbacks get cut. I'm looking at all these guys. I'm going, the market's flooded with quarterbacks.
Yeah, that was my whole thing. There's some decent names out there. And look, and Kenny Pickett, he's not even healthy.
No,
like we recouped the same pick that we got when we traded for a healthy Kenny Pickett. So I'm with you. I was kind of floored. I didn't think we'd get a 5th. I'm glad that we did. But I'm also with you that, like, I saw what the Browns saw in Kenny Pickett. Like, we've made reference to the, Sam Darnold of a year ago, and, a fresh start and a better situation and all that sort of stuff. Like, I totally understood it. And until he hurt his hamstring, I thought he was going to be the guy. I thought he's the guy they wanted to start. I thought he was going to be the guy from right off rip. And the injury kind of took him out of that.
Yeah. So, like, the guy I thought the Raiders were going to ultimately just sign when he got released was Mike White. I thought it was over when Mike White got released. Unfortunately, the Raiders didn't wait around and made the trade when they did. The other part of that, just from that standpoint, I sit here and I look at all these quarterbacks, and I'm sitting here going, I would happily sign, if he's willing to leave, Shane Buechele or somebody like the practice squad, as he played well in Buffalo in preseason, all that stuff. So I don't think it's difficult to get a guy in the practice squad that you're going to like as a quarterback. Now, the Browns may want more of a veteran type to sort of back that part up, because the third part, there is a risk here. There's undoubtedly a risk with what they did. Obviously, they didn't get to see a whole lot of Kenny Pickett, but he has played and started NFL football games. So if Joe Flacco gets hurt tomorrow, you're understandably nervous. You are understandably nervous about having Dylan Gabriel, who I grant you played well in the preseason. I thought he did a nice job to go, we're rolling with Dylan Gabriel as a starter. I like what I've seen from Dylan Gabriel. I'm not there yet. So and if people are sitting there going, I don't feel good that they don't have a veteran backup quarterback, I completely understand. There is a severe risk. So hopefully Joe Flacco stays very healthy. Yeah. But this is what Dylan Gabriel is drafted to be. Now, obviously, they would love nothing more than Dylan Gabriel to overperform everything and be a franchise quarterback. Yeah, but this is the role he was drafted to play in. And there are going to be people who are not happy about that, you included, that you're using a 3rd round pick to get this as a backup quarterback, but it at least sort of fills in there. And then Shedeur Sanders is clearly the number 3 at this point. I think watching the whole argument about Shedeur Sanders and the preseason game, what I think most people are missing from this is, one, yes, it was almost entirely his situation was entirely his own making, in terms of he's dropping way too far back in the pocket and screwing up the protection. And then he couldn't set his feet up to make throws that were there. And you've seen any number of people break down the video where you can see clear as day there are wide open receivers and opportunities to make plays. Let's skip that part. The part of people are very upset that they took Shedeur Sanders out and put Tyler Huntley in. Kevin Stefanski says they just wanted Tyler Huntley to get reps.
Yep.
I think Kevin Stefanski is absolutely lying. Yep. And I think he did the thing he should do. He protected a kid who could not protect himself. To me, it looked like boxing. It looked like a guy who was taking too many hits, and in an exhibition football game where it doesn't matter, he's already in a flak jacket.
Yep.
The way he's trying to escape pressure is setting himself up to get the knockout blow at some point. You already saw the fumble, which was ugly. Mm-hmm. And the people are saying they should have let him go back out there. He was going to get whacked. He was going to get whacked. So he's either going to get concussed, ribs broken, or something worse. And Kevin Stefanski said, look, it's just not there today. He's not there today. I'm getting him out. I'm going to put Tyler Huntley in. I'm protecting my investment, because they do look at Shedeur Sanders as an investment, as something they want to build on. Shedeur Sanders, I'm not unhappy that he's upset about being taken out. He wants to compete. But part of the problem is Shedeur Sanders, and he did this at Colorado, he will fight until he will die on the field if he has to. He has shown a willingness to lay his life out on the line on the field. So at that point, you are trying to develop him. You take him off the field when he cannot protect himself. And so the people are sitting there going, "Oh, you're sabotaging the kid." I think he did a huge service for him. Whether or not Shedeur Sanders sort of realizes an hour, hopefully when he got into the tape and is going, "Why'd you take me out? Why'd you take me out?" And then basically being like, "Oh, I was going to."
Answers are going to be all up there. Yeah.
So that's the part where I sit here and look at this and go, no, Kevin Stefanski handled this like a head coach should, like a guy who understands the quarterback position and what he's trying to get out of this guy, that it's not about the third preseason game and getting a 2-minute drive. It's about he's not where we want him to be. It's about Shedeur, hopefully, we're 10 months, 9 months, whatever it is. Where is he going to be in that amount of time as opposed to worrying about getting one more drive in an exhibition game?
Yeah. Well, and I think a big thing that people miss with the whole Shedeur thing is I keep hearing the sabotage and set up for failure, and he didn't have a single player with him that made the team. And I mean, the talent issue on the field was obviously evident, but that's his spot on the depth chart. It wasn't like some unfair thing to Shedeur. Gabriel has outperformed him from the start, not necessarily on the field, because I'm sure there are some drills and some whatever that Shedeur has stood out and Shedeur has looked good. But in the meetings and in the important stuff that we're not privy to, it's very clear that Gabriel's light years ahead. They treated Gabriel like a veteran. They treated Shedeur like a 5th-round pick who needed time. And when his number was called in the preseason game, he was with the same guys on his level of the depth chart. Granted, there was a lack of talent there. That's not anybody's fault. That's just the way that it was. And it happened to literally line up a perfect storm of all of Shedeur's problems being completely magnified by the lack of ability on the offensive line to protect him, by the receivers not getting open. Maybe I mean, there's obviously there's evidence of Shedeur missing throws, but let's be honest, it wasn't the greatest receiving core out there. And I think the point that people miss is that I believe personally, I'm a Shedeur guy. I think if Shedeur played with the first team or the second team, he would look better. But it's not a smart decision to have that kid carried by the first and second team when he's not ready. If he's not ready to elevate the third teamers to be better than what they should be, then he's not ready to lead the first and second team. He's just not.
Well, and you compare that to what you saw from Dillon Gabriel. If you just went, Dillon Gabriel has 3 Mississippis before he was going to get sacked. There were any number of plays where the ball was out well before that. 2 seconds, ball's out. Like, all these people are worried about, well, the line isn't blocking long enough. If Dillon Gabriel didn't have a line, he still would have gotten the ball out before he get hit. Like, that's the difference. Is he again? And this is the thing that Dillon Gabriel had when he came into the league. He knows where the answers are. And if you have a chance, Dan Orlovsky did a really nice video. Dan Orlovsky loves Dillon Gabriel right now because he's throwing the ball before guys are even getting to their breaks, let alone into their breaks. The ball's out. You can say what you want about the offensive line, some of which played for both quarterbacks in that preseason game, because Cornelius Lucas was out, so they had to. Yeah. But it doesn't matter. The ball's just out. And then when he does extend the play and he does sort of escape the pocket, he does it in the way he's supposed to. He does it where he has the answer. He knows how it's supposed to work. And that is not something Shedeur had. And the thing that gets lost in this whole thing, I'm not going to blame Deion Sanders, because ultimately you get into college and your job in college is to win football games. In the same way that there's, the Detroit Lions released Hendon Hooker and Jalen Hyatt looked like crap. I don't know if the Giants released him or not, but there's all this conversation about Tennessee. Tennessee is not trying to necessarily develop quarterback play or wide receiver play for the next level. That is certainly valuable for them as a potential recruiting tool, but ultimately that coach is trying to win football games. So Deion Sanders did not do a good job of developing Shedeur Sanders. And some of that is because they didn't have the blocking. They couldn't run a whole lot of stuff. You adapt to what you can do. Yeah. And your job is to then win football games. Well, he did that. But that didn't allow Shedeur to learn a lot of these things that he's now figuring out that he doesn't know. Yeah. That he can't take drops wherever he wants. That there is a prescribed depth to these things. That there is a specific way you need to be able to maneuver within the pocket that you have to process at a certain speed. And, there was talk that he had, because he had a former Pat Shurmur, who I hated Pat Shurmur as an NFL coach. So I wasn't exactly excited about Pat Shurmur being your offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
But like they kept tabbing him as, well, this is going to be a pro style offense because he's a pro style coach. It wasn't, because they didn't have a pro style anything else. So he did what guys do. He adapted and ran a very collegiate offense. I think, a lot of people tried to knock Jackson Dart at Ole Miss for Lane Kiffin's offense. There's a whole lot of similarities between what Ole Miss was doing and what Colorado was doing. There were basically four main concepts, and some of that was, one, they didn't have any line, and two, Travis Hunter was in defensive meetings all week, so he's getting the plays on the field.
Yep.
So Shedeur is at the mercy of all these other things that are going on, and so what do you ultimately get? You get a whole bunch of screens. You have no running game, and then your variance in the passing game is, well, the play breaks down, and now Shedeur gets to create, and he has talent doing that. But he also this was evident in college, overestimated his athleticism. He's twitchy, but he's slow. I maintain, and this game showed, Joe Mazzulo can beat him in a 40-yard dash. That there's just work he has to do. He's incredibly talented in terms of throwing the ball. There is a reason teams that he was highly touted in terms of throwing the ball and touch and all these things he can do and being a playmaker and all these other things. But there is a ton of work that's going to have to happen. And we've seen quarterbacks that have come into the league and not have this. And ultimately, some of them have figured it out. Josh Allen being the most notable example. And guys who haven't. I'll go from the same program because the kid I liked, Brett Smith, had the same problem where their offense was not suited to really help. And like talking to like people after the fact, like you found out like their play calls were like one word, like it'd be blue was a whole play. And it was, that was one of the reasons it was difficult for them to translate into the NFL, because you have all this other jargon. I've heard Kurt Warner talk about this. One of the things he had an issue with in Green Bay, he couldn't call a play. So when you don't have those things, now it's going to take a while. Doesn't mean he's not talented. Doesn't mean the Browns don't like him. It's just, this is where he is in his development. They are approaching it the right way, and he should be treated like that instead of the way we've done it, which is two parts. One is a Shedeur element, which is between the fans of Deion Sanders and then the following that he sort of brought with him, that there was the expectation that he was just going to be great.
He's
and then
walk in and start.
Part, which is, and we've seen this any number of times, the magic beans idea or the get rich quick scheme, which is this guy's going to come in and magically figure it out immediately, and we're just going to be great. And we've had this any number of times, and then people aren't ready to accept that's not really how it works. That it's going to take time to figure it out. Sure, Sanders could be a very good quarterback. He could also be out of the league in 2 years. We're going to see where his development goes, but at least I think the Browns are really good for him in a lot of ways, partly because Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry are very good at blocking out the noise and just being able to focus on what's important and create an environment that allows these guys to work, but just treating him like a player as opposed to a celebrity or the coach's son or any of this other stuff, and just letting him getting something that I think Shedeur needs. And I think, we'll see. Are we going to find out like throughout this process that Shedeur is like getting stuff that he's never gotten and he really appreciates this, or and if he's really successful, we're going to come back in a couple of years and he's going to say, man, I really needed A, B, and C to really figure this thing out.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, I think he's got a chance to do so, but if Saturday's game illustrated anything, it was very evident that what they've been saying the whole time is the case. The kid just needs time. And it's going into a new NFL offense after your father's been the coach for your entire competitive career almost. That's a huge leap. You're learning a new language, and you're learning a new language in a locker room filled with older, more established professional adults that make more money than you, have higher standing than you, but you're meant to lead and you're meant to call the shots. That's a very daunting thing for any young quarterback, and especially a young quarterback who is not ready. And it's crazy to me that the Browns and Stefanski getting flamed left and right for his handling of Shedeur. When Pete, you nailed it. He protected the kid. He saved him from himself, and he allowed him to play another down. And realistically, if his last name wasn't Sanders, he's probably on the practice squad, or he's probably hitting waivers right now, and they're probably figuring that out. But either way, we are where we are, and it is what it is. Moving on, let's shuffle over to running backs. We're going to keep going over the roster here. Now, we just got the two. We got Jerome Ford, we got Dylan Sampson, and obviously the Quinshon Judkins thing is kind of looming overhead. Hopefully we'll hear about that soon. Tell me, why should we be optimistic about Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson?
Jerome Ford, I think, is the most overhated running back that's been on this team in a while. There's a Pepe Pearson-like quality to him in that Pepe Pearson was a perfectly fine running back at Ohio State. Yep. His problem was he wasn't Eddie George, so he got crushed for it. Jerome Ford has always been punished for not being Nick Chubb. And don't get me wrong, he does things wrong. There are times where he will be going against nothing but a DB and will try to sidestep as opposed to putting his shoulder down and running through him. Or he will dance in a hole he shouldn't dance in. Some of the other things he will do where he's inconsistent. And then he will hit a home run. Like, he is such a dated reference. He's Rob Deere. He's that 200 batting average, 35 home run guy where he just swings really hard. And when it works, it's great. And so, like, he'll have a massive play. So he ends up with a 5-yard rushing average. And you sit there and go, how the hell did this happen? Because I see so many plays where he's not getting anything. And some of that is the blocking that was awful. But I don't think he always maximizes his yardage. The famous Week 10 game against the Ravens where the Deshaun Watson's, basically $90 million game. Jerome Ford was spectacular in that game. And just did what he was supposed to, handled it correctly. And the one thing I really like about Jerome Ford, and this was evident in the game, is his hips and his ability to adjust to passes is impressive. And Dylan Sampson, sort of lost as I was panicking over the potential loss of the starting center. But the play he made out of the backfield was great. One, I thought he was in the slot when it happened, which was sort of like, oh, that's interesting. It turns out he was in the backfield. He catches the ball, bounces off 2 guys, and gets more yardage. That's what I want to see. I want to see him in space. Yes, I know that eventually he's going to get balls handed to him in the backfield and have to beat 11 guys. I want to see him getting as many opportunities where he's got to beat 2 or 1 because he's legitimately supremely athletic. He seems to be really great. And he's 21. So they give you the speed / pass game element in terms of receiving. Jerome Ford's probably doing most blocking. I never want to see Dylan Sampson block. Other than chip and release at best, because he's 5'8" and 200 pounds. I just don't think it's realistic. But these are guys in an offense where I think you need to be able to throw the ball to your running backs, given that we have questions at wide receiver. These guys give you that element, which I think is important. The issue is now, can you find the road grader? Can you find the guy who's going to pound it in between the tackles? Can you get that element? And obviously, the guy that
we know the answer, we know who we want.
It's Quinshon Judkins. Now, the one thing I heard that was sort of interesting, and I'll be curious to see if it actually works that way, is that the NFL is going to come out as a news dump right before Labor Day weekend and just do all their suspensions, all of it at once and just dump it all out. And if that's the case, great. Then we're finally going to get an answer on Quinshon Judkins, Devin Bush, and be able to then go. Until then, I'm hopefully going to be proven prescient on this one. I wrote back in the end of July, right when training camp was starting, that when this whole thing came down, I wasn't worried about signing a running back in camp because waivers were going to take care of it. And at the time, I was sitting there looking at the Denver Broncos going, I will take any of these guys that they want to cut, and I will feel good about it. There are other options that were also released that I'm intrigued by, but I have no doubt that the Browns will be able to get somebody I think that can help them. Is it going to replace a Quinshon Judkins? No, and the Browns were super high on what he was able to do, and hopefully that's going to be coming soon. But I do think they can get somebody that can give them more than Amani Marshall, who I would have determined would have been the best of the rest type thing in that mold. I think they can do better than that.
Yeah. One thing I would like to point out about Jerome Ford too, he got his first like full, sample size when Chubb went down in 2023. But if you remember, as that season went along, the offensive line was just decimated with injuries. I want to say, especially with that playoff run with Flacco, we were down to like the 4th and 5th offensive tackles. Like it was bad. I feel like Ford's never really gotten a true fair shake, because obviously in 2024 we can almost throw out the window because it was just a mess top to bottom. I'm intrigued to see what Jerome Ford can do if there is any sort of hold up in Judkins, whether it's a suspension or whether he continues to hold out or whatever. I don't think that it's like a bare cupboard at that position. I mean, we're super high on Sampson, obviously, but Jerome Ford's he's a tough player. He's a size, speed, like he's a specimen. Like I think he's going to be a pleasant surprise for Browns fans, as opposed to oh no, we're stuck with Jerome Ford.
I hope so. He's got to do a better job of knowing the situation and the tool for the job in terms of getting behind his pads and when he can use speed and agility and when he can sort of afford to try to make guys miss. Ultimately, if he just gets behind his pads every time, I think he'd be better off than what he does now. But every so often he does something, and again, he will hit a home run, and you'll sit there and go, no, yes, in terms of his impact. So he can give you something. But there are 3 guys. I'll be curious if there are others that jump out. Audric Estime, for me, was my top back of that year. Not a great running back class, but I love Audric Estime at Notre Dame. Tommy Rees was his offensive coordinator. I think he fits the offense. I'll be very curious to see if the Browns don't agree. Damian Martinez, who's released by Seattle, was a rookie this year. I thought the Browns might be very intrigued by him because he's a big power guy who's got more juice than you think. Ultimately went in round 7. They were willing to cut him. I'd be very intrigued by that if they want a big back. And then the guy who I don't know if he fits what the Browns offense is now, but would have, based on what they were doing last year, and we'll see, is Raheem Sanders, who was released by the Chargers. Big back, decent amount of speed, wildly efficient on 3rd down in college as a guy who would just get behind his pads and go and had a number of big runs doing that. So if you're trying to get sort of that workhorse fill-in type, or until Judkins is back, Estime is my favorite of those options. I
feel like all 3 of those guys are tipping the scales over 230. I think there's value in that in terms of what the Browns want to be. If they, obviously we're all hoping that Joe Flacco in this passing game can get going, but like, let's play the worst case scenario, which is that it's going to be a plodding offense. The Browns play great defense, can run the ball enough, shorten games, and basically rip off what the Steelers want to be, play good special teams, and you're just in it at the end. Okay, like I can live in that world. Again, I'm hoping Joe Flacco and these receivers can do more than that. But if that's where we're at, then yes, I want to get a bigger body that can absorb carries to sort of balance out this group. And obviously, the Browns had that thought process. Obviously, Quinshon Judkins is an elite athlete. His explosion and all that stuff was just otherworldly. But he's also 225 pounds and he was a power back with extra. So if I'm looking at this, I'm trying to get a little bit out of that with those guys. Now, I don't think any of those guys is going to give you much in the passing game, which is fine. I've got Ford and Sampson, so it makes it really easy. Now, it does sort of give away what you're doing, but if it still allows you to do things like play action and some screen stuff. So I'm very eager to see who the Browns bring in from that group. Estime is still my guy, but we'll see if they don't agree with that assessment and come in with a bigger back. Okay. All right. Well, we'll move on along to the wide receiver room. But before we do that,
Make sure to check out the Browns Beat every Wednesday, 7 p.m. with Michael Keefe and Fred Greetham. And they've got a weekly guest on there, and always somebody new, always somebody interesting. Fred's on the front lines every day with the Beat. So you want a lot of information, that's the show to listen to. Like I said, Wednesday, 7 p.m. on the OBR streaming network. So Deontay Johnson's a bit of a surprise. I think it ultimately comes down to special teams, but do you think there's anything outside of special teams for that? Do you think Jamari Thrash and kind of his ascension throughout training camp maybe pushed him out the door?
Well, it's those two things combined.
Yeah.
You can't be wide receiver 4 and not contribute on special teams because you're not going to put Jerry Jeudy out there. Cedric Tillman, probably not. I don't know that Jamari Thrash is going to contribute on special teams. So I think Jamari Thrash passed him, or at least at the very, let's say it was a tie. You're going to give it to the younger guy in that scenario. So you're sitting there as wide receiver 4, and you don't play special teams. And the Browns already told you they're taking Isaiah Bond, and he doesn't play special teams. So all of a sudden you're sitting there going, I'm screwed. I am not going to be here. So it didn't turn out surprising. Obviously, I was holding out hope that somehow, some way, that some dopey team would give us something for him, even if it was just player that they were going to release for Deontay Johnson. I was hoping they'd move him. I'm still not, I don't think that room is settled, and I don't think it's settled in a way that it's, I mean, we'll see. The DeAndre Carter thing is sort of sitting there like a meatball, where I think if the Browns get something else in, I think he could be the other shoe that drops.
Yeah.
Because you have Gage Laverdane, that you can, who can return on, can contribute on special teams, can return punts. Caden Davis, I have very little doubt, is going to be right back on this thing on the practice squad. I don't see a whole lot of teams clamoring to put in a waiver claim for Caden Davis. Mm-hmm. So I think you're going to be able to get him back. And if there's something else that jumps out at them, maybe they'll go ahead and then cut bait with DeAndre Carter. I've seen all these people clamoring for various options. I'm a little hesitant in terms of, I don't think it's going to be a random rookie like that somebody cut or something along those lines. Because, even though he's been here for a little while, I look at Isaiah Bond as a waiver claim. And at that point, you are now saying to me, we're going to have two guys who have basically been here 5 minutes and are potentially play away from one of them having to take meaningful snaps in a game. I think that's a position the Browns want to avoid. Now, obviously, they could do things like activate Caden Davis and inactive one of those guys. Maybe that's the thought process. But I'd be looking, if the Browns are going to make a move in that capacity, I'd be looking along the lines of older, veteran type. Is that going to pop up? Hard to say. There are some guys out there like, the Raiders are insisting Jacoby Myers isn't going anywhere. I don't know if the Browns care about him or not, but that's where I sort of sit there. And obviously you sit there and you look at this group and you go, Jerry Jeudy's great. Everything else is unproven. There are things I like, but got to see it happen consistently over the course of the season to feel good about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I get that. What about a veteran like Hunter Renfrow? The Panthers let him go. Do you think he offers anything of worth?
Too veteran. He's too veteran. Look,
grizzled.
Well, I don't know. I just don't know if the Browns are all that interested in that style of receiver. Obviously, they messed around with Luke Flourier and Cade McDonald, so maybe there's a small amount of appetite. The thing with Renfrow is he's hyper specific. Yeah. Obviously he had a whole lot of success with Gruden and company, and they gave him a bunch of money, and then Gruden gets moved out, and they go in with McDaniels, who's immediately like, I don't use this at all, and moved on from it. And the Carolina Panthers, who I can't sit here and go, the Carolina Panthers are exactly loaded with wide receiver talent, are like, we're good. So I'm not all that interested. And the other part about this is like, yes, look, if they really want a veteran, they could do that. I'd be more inclined to think they'd rather go with younger guys that they hope have a future beyond just 1 year.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, and especially like you said, you already got Isaiah Bond who just showed up. It'd be tough to fill that room with another guy who's still getting his feet wet and figuring things out in the offense. And as you noted, they're one hit away from playing significant snaps. And, that's a nightmare scenario, So we touched on tight end a little bit earlier. And obviously, we all know, David Njoku's a rock star. We're super excited about Harold Fannin, who flashed a little bit with the touchdown pass from Flacco, which was absolutely gorgeous to see. But Blake Whitehart and Brandon Bates, do you think both are in trouble? Do you think both are going to be here for Cincinnati?
I think it entirely depends on Blake Whitehart's health. I think he's the guy they really like. I think eventually they'd like to get Brendan Bates to the practice squad if they can. Yeah. They get to sort of, this is sort of one of those things where I projected in terms of thinking about how this would ultimately play out is there's a couple guys you wait till sort of rosters get set up and teams are sort of happy with where they are. And then you release a guy, get him back to your practice squad. That way. I think that's probably the likelihood with Bates, until we start getting injury reports, difficult to know with Whitehart. So clearly it's concerning enough that Bates is on the active roster, that they're not just immediately assuming that Blake Whitehart's going to be ready to go or wasn't practicing today, for example. So that's where I think that's sort of headed. But the bigger part with, we know what Njoku can do. Harold Fannin, the touchdown, he's not lined up at tight end. He's not lined up in the slot. They put him out at the X.
Yep. And
said, hey, we're going to put you in space. And obviously it's against the Rams backup, so you have to take it with a small grain of salt. But at least the Browns said, this is what we are doing with him. This is one of the options we are having with him. I'm really interested to see all the ways they want to utilize him. The other thing they tried to do with him, which does not surprise me at all, is they tried to give a screen to him because he's just such a weird guy to tackle. And even then, he caught the ball like behind the line of scrimmage and if you watched his tape in college, he did the same thing where he just sort of slowly matriculate through this pile of guys and figure it out. Didn't make a huge play, but he's just in space. If you can get him the ball, he's
instinctive.
He's always one broken tackle away from breaking off a big play. So him and Dylan Sampson are these two pieces where I sit here and go, I just can't wait to see. One, obviously it depends on how much they can absorb in terms of the amount of things they do, but that certainly suggests that we're headed in a good direction. All the different ways that they're going to try to utilize these guys, because they are both, if you don't have, a great receiving room, what you do have is two guys that are a pain in the ass to defend. Like if you put Dylan Sampson out wide, what do you cover him with? If you put Harold Fannin out wide, as they did, do you want to cover him with a corner? Like putting the defense in these decisions where they have to figure this out. And if you are, you're running your offense and you can shift your formations around and do all these other things where, like, even if a defense thinks they've got you sort of pegged on a personnel group and all of a sudden you run out of formation and Harold Fann's out wide and Dylan Sampson in the slot, you got to have an answer for that. And I think that becomes a way for the Browns to put stress on teams and potentially create issues for them. And it may just be to run the ball at that point, which is fine. Create a numbers advantage that way. But if you can get them the ball in these various ways, like, I'm really excited to see what that looks like and if it can work, because I think there's absolutely a world where that is really problematic. I've always been a big fan of getting multiple tight ends because there aren't a whole lot of guys on most defenses don't have multiple guys that can cover them. They usually don't have one. And every year, Browns fans and Steelers fans are always sitting there going, we have the tight end is always open against us. So now you've got two guys. I loved Isaiah Likely coming out of college as that type of role. I like what Harold Fannin can be in that exact type of role. I'm curious to see what is this going to look like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be intriguing. And I always thought Fannin just so versatile. You can move him around, you can split him out wide. You can put him in the backfield if you want. I like the guys that as soon as they get the ball in their hands, they become running backs. Whether it's a receiver or a tight end. I mean, obviously, running backs are running backs, right? But you know that there are certain receivers that just have a different gear when they get the ball in their hands. They know the low center of gravity. They can bounce off tackles. Like I always used to love watching Golden Tate, man. That dude was phenomenal with the ball in his hands. And that's what I like to see that the Browns are looking for with these weapons. Guy like Fannin, a guy like Sampson, get him in space, let him move. Yeah. And shout out to everybody in the chat, by the way. Appreciate you guys with us tonight. The encouraging words, all that good stuff. We appreciate it very, very much. Shout out again to the OBR streaming network for having us. So offensive line. We're pretty much set in stone with the starting five. We got DeWand, we got Batonio, Posick if he's healthy, Wyatt Teller, Jack Conklin. What's your number one concern? I mean, outside of health. I mean, obviously health is health, and we've got some questionable guys in terms of health on the line right now. But outside of health, what is your number one concern with that line?
DeWand Jones run blocking. I want to see him actually do it because so far he has been just kind of there. And even in the preseason, he's lighter. He's moving a little bit better. It's still awkward. I want to see him get more comfortable in there because, look, if he can become a complete tackle, and he doesn't necessarily have to be, but if he can become a complete tackle, they're in business at that spot. Now, the reality is you can get away with him just being a pure pass protector and just run everything to the right. That's fine as long as he can continue to be a rock solid pass protector. But I'm hoping that he can do more than that. And at that point, then you're talking about, well, we've got our left tackle. And obviously for him, you mentioned it, it's health. He's had multiple surgeries just on the one leg, which is never good, especially for a guy that size. Fortunately, he's lost a bunch of weight. Hopefully it stays that way. I think everybody else on that front is going to run block. Ethan Posick is what he is. He's never going to be great, but he'll at least provide effort. If DeWand Jones can give you 2 ways to go, or 3 ways if you include the middle, that really opens things up. So I want to see it. I want to see what Mike Bloomgren can get out of him. There's a ton of talent in there. He's a really good athlete. When you consider his size, and it's not in terms of his agility because he moves like a bookcase, but it's his speed and his explosion. If he can get that right and he can aim it, he can potentially have explosive power and do some stuff in there. And if he just gets in position, he's so big that he's going to block out the sun and open some things up. So I want to see where that goes. What does it look like? Is he the left tackle? Can he be that guy? If he's not, then the Browns have a whole lot of things they got to worry about. But if he is, I think people, the Browns, people are still going to sit there and go, man, they got a lot of things they've got to, address in the next couple off seasons as far as getting a younger line. But DeWand Jones could do a whole lot to sort of quiet that down and make people feel better about the future of this line.
Yeah. So Tevin Jenkins, I find to be very interesting in a reserve role. I feel like his inability to be trusted to stay healthy is, going to be an issue with him. I see a series of 1-year prove-it deals for the rest of his career. That's just the way the cookie crumbles for him right now. But I like him. I think he's mean. I think he's tough. His position versatility is there. I almost would be interested to see him at tackle too if they need to do that. Especially on the right side.
Keep going.
What do you keep going? Oh, the third tackle.
He's jumbo tight end, baby.
There it is.
He's got a Stanford offensive line coach. Look, he played really well in the two preseason games in pass protection.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you. Watch him run block. Put him outside. Put him next to Jack Conklin. I don't care. Just put those two next to each other and just do work. Yeah. I'm fine with that. And I fully expect that's going to be a thing where Tevin Jenkins, so long as he's healthy, is going to be that guy. And I expect they are going to deploy him consistently and thoroughly this year, and you're going to get at times old school Jim Harbaugh, David Shaw, Stanford-like approach. You're going to be like, yeah, I'm putting 6 guys out here. You know exactly what's coming. Do something about it. You've also got those guys plus David Njoku, who can be a good run blocker. And you've got Harold Fannin. So your jumbo package is very jumbo.
Yep.
So, obviously, again, get a big back behind those guys or even get a small one. If you can condense the formation down and create a running lane for Dylan Sampson to fly out or Jerome Ford to hit a home run, great. But if you can, again, I go back to that Ravens game. You just sit there and go, we're coming. What are you going to do about it? And they couldn't stop it. And they broke the Ravens in that game.
Yep.
Tevin Jenkins, to me, that mentality is a microcosm of what is going to make this team successful this year. That guy, that mentality saying, listen, I'm coming. I'm going to hurt you running the ball. What are you going to do about it? And, if he can stay healthy long enough to just keep doing that over and over again, guys are going to get tired of getting hit by him, and he's going to wear on people.
Yep. Agreed. Especially, I mean, if, when you think of this team in the whole picture, and it's a little bit of a leap just because there's so much uncertainty around. It's just a matter of time. But I get super excited when I think about this team with everybody available, with Judkins as the lead back, and then being able to just mix in Sampson here or there, Ford here or there. You got the 2 tight ends that are both weapons. You've got, again, like we've hit on it multiple times. Obviously, the health of this offensive line is always going to be a question because there's spots here or there, but that's every line in the league. Health is an issue for every single team in the NFL. If you look at the depth, this offensive line is deep. This is solid. We've got guys that I'm not scared to enter the game. And realistically, that's not always the case. There's a lot of times a lot of teams that don't feel good about all 5 starters, let alone are 9 or 10 guys deep.
It's completely opposite to where they were the last 2 years. Cornelius Lucas was a huge signing. Tevin Jenkins fortifies that group. And then Luke Whippler, just being the player they thought he could be, coming back from the ankle injury, looks great. Then, you're 8 deep. You feel great if you're 8 deep. Now, you don't love it when Cornelius Lucas is dealing with an ankle and he's not practicing. You don't love that Ethan Posick is already not practicing. That shows you the potential fragility there. But, line all those guys up, run the ball. And, hell, they already showed you that they'll put Aiden Huntington at fullback. So you can put just all the beef on there and just say, this is who we are and what we're going to be.
Yeah, love that. Love the Huntington and fullback element. And I was trying to remember. They had, I want to say Winston Reed took snaps as a fullback in the past before, and they had either a guard or another tackle, a D tackle that they would trot out for fullback.
Nick Harris was the center that kept popping back.
That's right. It was Nick Harris. Yeah, I like that. I like those little wrinkles Stefanski does. I do enjoy that quite a bit. All right, so moving over to the defensive side of the ball, I believe I saw multiple mentions in the chat here, and Pete, I want to give you your flowers. Your boy Aiden Huntington is a dude. He is a Cleveland Brown, and that man, boy, he had a full highlight reel just for himself of that Rams game. I felt so bad for that quarterback.
I like the fact that they asked him about it in the press. They asked him about the Baldy's breakdown in his press conference today, and that he said his whole, like, one of his goals as a football player was to get a positive Baldy's breakdown, and obviously, I love those as well, because the thing is, every time I watch those, I can tell Brian Baldinger's standing up, like the way he goes. He's not sitting down when he's doing that. He's so fired up. He's always standing up. So yeah, look, the moment he was signed, I was like, okay, this is interesting, because I do not say this lightly. His explosion is on the same level as Myles Garrett. Yep. Myles Garrett, who, and I know this because I basically know his workout by heart. 41-inch vertical at 272 pounds. He ran a 4.62 40, and his broad jump was like 10.8 or something like that. Aiden Huntington at 280 pounds. 10'8" broad jump. 38-inch vertical, ran a 4.64 40, and this is pro day. But to move that quickly at that size, and it's not like Myles Garrett didn't test agility, but Aiden Huntington did, and he ran like a 7.5 something 3-cone, which is that all pro level? No, but it's really good and suggests you have pretty good balance. Now, he's not great in change of direction, but it's not necessarily just about your ability to sort of change direction. Those things. It's also just balance.
Yeah.
And he crushed it as far as that goes. So then you watch him, and I watched him at Tulane. It's awkward because he's 6 foot tall, and he's so strong that he looks short at 6 foot. And then he doesn't have very long arms. But it's the ability to dent and put people into the backfield, his ability to get off the ball. And then the thing that really jumps out to you in his college tape, and he addressed it in his press conference because you also saw it when he was on the Browns. He pursues the ball everywhere. He goes, and there are plays where he's at Tulane, and he will chase the ball down from behind and cause a fumble. And look, from a fan standpoint, watching him on special teams is awesome because you see the giant man just rumbling down the field and being like the first guy down there.
Moving way faster than he should be moving.
From an opponent's standpoint, that has to be utterly terrifying. If you're a punt returner and you see this coming, it's like the boulder from Raiders of the Lost Ark at that point. Like I don't want to die. That is all my whole thought. Forget catch the ball. You can have the ball. I just don't kill me. And it's not like he's just running down there and flying past. No, he's able to turn and track down the play. He led the team in special teams tackles.
Yep.
He was on punt. He's on kickoff. He's on all these things. And then they obviously put in the backfield. And then the thing, and when he was initially signed, it was, he watched him. I didn't like him as a read and react player. I like him as an attacking player. Okay. Jim Schwartz says, listen, you're never going to read and react. Just get off the ball and go. And, again, it's against Rams backups. I don't care. Some of the stuff he does athletically where, Baldinger broke it down real well, where it looks like his knee scrapes the ground as he's cornering to make the sack. I don't care what string you are. You do not enjoy taking that on and trying to deal with it. And, we'll see what he can ultimately do this season. But he's a guy where if you're the opponent, you have to take him seriously every single play because he's just so athletic and you just don't know when he's going to be able to just go right past you. He's going to keep people honest. He's going to make people nervous. And if they get hands on, maybe they'll be okay, but he's still going to likely push you back into the backfield. And for the Browns pass rush, that in itself is valuable because they've got Myles Garrett and these other guys where if the quarterback can't step up, they're in great shape. But like if he's good enough where he can get in the rotation for 10 snaps or whatever.
Yeah.
With Myles Garrett, with these other guys. And if he comes through, like if they are worried about all these other guys and this guy comes through and gets your quarterback square in the chest, it's going to hurt.
Yep.
I mean, the 2 hits he put on the Rams quarterback were not like cheapies. He got his money's worth on both of them.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And that's the thing. When you have the talent that we have on the defensive line, a kid like that can fly under the radar. But at the end of the day, he's still a 6 foot, 280-pound stick of dynamite that's going to be moving and is coming downhill. Like I don't care who that offensive line is. If you've got horses coming up field like that with that power and speed ratio, I'm in, man. It's going to be fun to watch. How about so DNs? Let's focus on DNs real quick before we get to the rest of the defensive tackle room. Obviously, Myles Garrett is walking on water, but Isaiah McGuire, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, and then Cam Thomas, right? Am I missing? Oh, Alex Wright is the fifth. Yeah.
Cam Thomas, third round pick out of San Diego State for Arizona in like 2022. And it was weird because the Browns had just hired their assistant defensive line coach. It knew everything about him. Mm-hmm. And Arizona grabbed him and ultimately they got him. And again, he just fits what they want to do. He just gets off the ball and goes. And the second preseason game wasn't great because he had a couple of penalties. But, man, he just goes. He had a really high pass rush win rate. Even last year where they claimed him on waivers after Arizona gave up on him.
He produced.
He played 64 snaps, not a huge sample size, 8 stops. 8 stops. That again, this is PFF's term for plays designated failure by offense. 12.5% of his plays, he resulted in failure. And this was not against backups. This was against starters. So, no, does that guarantee he's going to be successful? Obviously not. But that sample size at least goes, okay, I want to see what he can do in camp. And lo and behold, we see him. He continues to flash in preseason. I mean, for me, other than like the rookie quarterbacks, Cam Thomas and Aiden Huntington were the show for me. I just couldn't wait till they got on the field because they just play so fast. They fit. The other reason I am very happy about Cam Thomas, I am not enamored with what I've seen from Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. And I'm not going to get on too much about the KT Leviston play, although that's just one more thing. I want to see more from him. I just haven't seen a whole lot. Obviously, when DTR eventually threw the ball to basically Shelby Harris or whatever, he was there. He got pressure on that. But it feels to me like he really should be the fifth guy. I'm hoping he's going to do more that makes me feel better about this. And it was just sort of, again, small sample size. We're not getting a whole lot. It's not like he was bad. I don't want to say, I don't want it to make it sound like he's bad. He's certainly better than the Julian Aquaras and those type of guys, those type of players. But when you signed him, it was sort of with the thought process of, could he really be a third end? And now it's more along the lines, is he going to be a fourth end? And I'm not entirely sure he's not the fifth. And look, if he's your fifth end, you're doing okay. Like you're in a good spot.
You're doing more than okay. Yeah.
But, I'm just very curious to see how that shakes out. And are we going to see a situation where Cam Thomas potentially shoots over him on the depth chart, or is Joe Tryon going to suddenly show up and make me feel better about his presence on this roster? And again, I don't want to overstate it. They gave him like $4 million. It's not like they paid him a mint to come in, but it was like the one move they made, along with Malik Collins, where you're sitting there going, okay, they feel good about him. I'm glad they have Cam Thomas for that reason. I'm glad Alex Wright looks good for that reason, because Joe Tryon has not given me a whole lot of reasons to feel great about him. And again, I hope when we get to Cincinnati, he's going to cause a sack fumble, and I'm going to sit there and be like, okay, great. I love it. But to this point, I've been sort of lukewarm on what I've seen.
Yeah. Alex Wright is a guy who I thought was really coming on last year before the injury. It was biceps, right? Or a triceps? Tricep. Okay. So I'm intrigued by him. I think he had a strong preseason. Strong camp from everything that I've heard. I'm intrigued to see what he's going to do over the course of his season. How do you feel about Alex Wright heading into this? And do you think he's a guy that could alter? Well, I mean, it's him or Isaiah McGuire could be that running mate for Miles going forward.
Well, I've got my guy. My guy's Isaiah McGuire. I was early adopter on Isaiah McGuire. Me and him are tight. Because what was interesting to me sort of going to camp, and I was sort of taken aback by this, to me, like Isaiah McGuire, based on what he did last year, I was sitting here going, he's walking in, he's the starter. Like he's that dude because he got so much better as a run defender. His metrics at pass rushing, he had like really good pass rush run rate. It just hadn't translated into pressures and sacks yet, and it felt like that was the next step. So when people were talking about, oh man, it's these two guys competing, that it did end up being the case that those guys were really competing. I still feel like Isaiah McGuire is the superior player. Mm-hmm. And part of that is based on the fact that Isaiah McGuire is an end. He is an end and only an end. Alex Wright is still going to bounce around the line. Obviously, the safety he had that helped seal the Jacksonville Jaguars victory, he was in a 3 or 4. Flew up the field from there and does that. So I like that versatility, but to me, Isaiah McGuire is home in the sense that you always know where he's going to be as one of those defensive ends. And I just felt like, and again, he wasn't going against starters, but man, he was dominant in preseason. And it just felt like
you're talking McGuire, right?
Yes. McGuire dominated in preseason. So where he started last year to where he's, even if you're not sure that he's going to necessarily take that next step and be a complete player, where he's starting from this year is way higher than it was last year. And he was so good to me. Like if you're asking me who has the biggest chance to be a breakout star in the Browns, to me, it's far and away Isaiah McGuire. like if you're, and I don't mean like he's going to be pretty good. I mean like
he's going to be damn good.
The best end that Myles Garrett has played with in his career type. Isaiah McGuire to me is the best chance to be that legitimate stud across from him. But to get to Alex Wright, I like the fact you can put both of them on the field at the same time. You can put all three of those guys on the field and go, and Alex Wright can rush from any number of spots. And, you know, if you learn anything from the preseason, it was don't try to block him with just the tight end. So his size, his versatility, his athleticism are intriguing. The fact that you never know where you can't really know where he's going to be on a given play is really interesting. I want to see his consistency. Obviously, he had a run at the end of the 2023 season where he had 5 sacks in 5 games, but his metrics weren't very good. His metrics were okay last year, but he had a couple of big plays and then he got hurt. I want to see him string that stuff together and be that guy. Now, if you're telling me that we get in a situation where Isaiah McGuire and Alex Wright are 2A and 2B, then the Browns are in really, really good shape.
Yeah. What would you expect from Mike Hall for the first month of the season? Do you think he's in any kind of shape to come in and be a guy right away? Do you think he's going to be in the rotation, or do you think this is going to be a slow process for him? Because he passed his physical, right? He's good to go.
Yeah, they had to activate him, or he would have reverted to short-term IR.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's going to have a problem. I think the Browns were slow playing him in some respects just to get him fully healthy. They've got him to practice. They get him to practice. Obviously, would have started today. They're going to get him for a couple weeks. You know, does that mean a slightly smaller snap count? Maybe. Obviously, it depends on what he was doing conditioning wise up to this point. Is he ready for a full load of snaps? And then the other part is the Browns, just the way they're built, they can rotate a lot of guys with Malik Collins, with Mason Graham, with now Aiden Huntington, with Shelby Harris. They can, I think, if anything for Hall, it's that early on in the year, the Browns get to pick their spots with him, as opposed to being necessarily a fully fledged out thing. Because I think that's where this is going. They want him. The goal here is eventually that Mason Graham and Mike Hall are your guys getting the highest number of snaps for this crew in the destined future. It's less important for that position that he necessarily gets a full boat of snaps, but he can play the run better than I thought he could based on last year if that carries over. And he's incredibly dynamic as a pass rush threat. And again, we're going to enter a world, perfect world. Mason Graham and Shelby Harris probably go out there as your first 2 defensive tackles to stop the run. And then you get to 2nd and long and 3rd and long, and you're just like, all right, Malik and Mike, get in there, Miles and whoever at that point, and go get the quarterback. Like, that is the dream scenario where they can just put in Malik Collins and Hall inside and just wreak havoc from that standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. And before, and it killed me, the timing of the injury too. Anytime it's a dead season anyway, and you get a late season injury like that, always kills me. But man, he was fun to watch. He's another one that dynamic is the word. He's very explosive. It's that, speed to power combo that these guys use. Man, I'm super intrigued to see what he could do if he's fully healthy and he's got the juice back in his legs. I feel like Carson Schlesinger, if we're going to, keep plodding along here, Carson Schlesinger is kind of the talk of camp in terms of rookies. And the fact that he just hit the field as a dude, he's got the green dot. I mean, could his spring and summer gone any better?
No.
In terms of an early return for a draft pick?
No, I mean, the big thing, again, from a process standpoint, I don't want to use a 33rd pick on a linebacker. But if you're going to do it, I want him to look like Carson Schlesinger has looked to this point. The thing with Carson Schlesinger, and I'm sure he'll make mistakes, is he has looked like the guy from UCLA has seamlessly transitioned to the NFL. And that's terrifying because he got basically 1 in every 5 tackles at UCLA. And then you saw it. I mean, they put him in there. His speed on the blitz You watch him at UCLA, he does the exact same thing, and he is on you so fast. And part of the problem is it's his speed, but he's so big that it takes up space. He's not like a 5'11" linebacker coming through and who's going to cut you in half.
He's
six,
rangy. He's got long arms.
He's long. He's 240. So if he hits you, you're going to stay hit. That part of it is extremely, interesting because, like, it feeds into my idea of how the secondaries ultimately go, where Jim Schwartz is like, listen, if I don't have a great secondary, fine, start the clock. You have this long to get the ball out, or your quarterback dies. And even if he does get the ball out, and my guy still hits you, and maybe we get a flag, but ultimately your guy's still getting hit. That feeds into that, and so if he doesn't have to mug a guard or a center to do that. Like this is one of those things I love, just as a defensive concept. You line up. They did this with JOK all the time. You do this with Carson Schwartz. If you want to line him up with a center or a guard, and then you have your 4 defensive linemen all take up a guy. When the ball is snapped, even if Carson Schwarzenegger drops back, that lineman still has to account for the fact that he might come. Now that guy can't help his guy that's next to him or whatever. And all of a sudden now everybody's got a one-on-one matchup except Myles Garrett. And you're it's a race at that point. I love that element. One of the things that immediately went through my head, as much as I hate it, is the amount of invert 2 that Jim Schwartz loves to run. Carson Schwarzenegger solves the problem that we're no longer sending Sione Takitaki to drop back the deep middle and try to cover that thing. You've got a guy who can legitimately run and get back there. And again, it's just because yes, he's fast and he covers ground and does all these things, but part of it, he physically just takes up space. So I'll be very interested to see ultimately what he's able to do. I'm really hoping that at least a couple times this year that he's going to either show like he's coming, drop. The quarterback's not going to see him coming. He's going to undercut something, and he's just so big that suddenly he's picking the ball off and taking it to the house or whatever.
We saw him do it in camp.
I mean, the amount of things he can do is incredible. And the only thing you worry about is he doesn't get overworked and overloaded in terms of that type of stuff. But seemingly he's a guy that they talk about in terms of, yes, he will make some mistakes, but he won't repeat mistakes. And, Jim Schwartz is very hard on these guys. So it is not easy for him to trust the guy who's the green dot. So it already says a lot to me that he's willing to do that. And we'll see if he ultimately trusts him. Grant Delpit basically volunteered and said, if he can't do it, I will. But I think you're going to give it to him. You're going to live with the mistakes, and you're going to love, even when he's wrong, the amount of things he can do.
Yeah, agreed. Rounding out the rest of that room, Mo Diabate, who is in his 3rd year now with the Browns and is an emerging player. I like Diabate. I like the skill set, size, range, everything like that. Now, I feel like we talked last week, and we both kind of agreed that the Browns want him to be the will. But that third guy, whether it's Jerome Baker or, depending on the suspension, Devin Bush, what do you think about Easton Mascarenas-Arnold? He's kind of flew around. He's flashed a little bit in the preseason. I mean, he's a special teamer and a depth guy. But do you think there's any future with that, or you think he's just kind of the special teams linebacker for the year?
I don't think the Browns think of him that way, even though he's small, relatively speaking, 5'11", like high 220, maybe he's going to be 230.
Yeah.
Good agility, not super top end speed, but the biggest thing you hear with him is he's smart. And if you're smart and you can process fast, generally speaking, and Carson Schwarzenegger is a good example of this, you can play faster because you sort of know where things are going. That seems to be a thing with Mascarenas-Arnold. And the thing I always default to with any linebacker is I look at college tackling. He had a good percentage of solo tackles. Like, that's the job on defense in general, but particularly for linebacker. Your job is to go make tackles. So, yes, He's going to be a guy who plays a whole lot of special teams, as is Carson Schwarzenegger. They're not going to mess around with it. He's a weapon in that regard. I am curious to see if they eventually try to move him to the practice squad, or if they're just content with keeping him because they're worried that if they do let him go, that he's going to get snatched up because he's smart. Part of the reason I think he's probably safe is Winston Reed is apparently on short-term IR, which I thought maybe he was going to be a guy they'd keep. So that maybe saves him. The good news is Mohamed Diabate did not get any designation, and because he's been out for a while. Hopefully that means he's about ready to come back. And then, he's going to have, I think they want him to be the starting will. But if Devin Bush is suspended and they want to put a third linebacker on the field, I think Diabate potentially then goes to Sam, and then Baker comes in and plays the will. But we'll see. I mean, ultimately, if Diabate's got to be ready to go and be good, I think Jerome Baker has continued to represent a floor of sorts, that if Diabate is not where he needs to be, that Baker's this thing. Certainly, I think Diabate is where they want to go. I think the Browns would love nothing more than Diabate to win that job, take it, and earn a contract extension, and just be able to say, these are our guys going forward, unless JOK is able to come back, and then you've got three guys and you're really happy with all three.
Yeah, I get that. I agree with that. How about so the cornerback position? Now, I think Dom Jones is like the one surprise, right? At least for me.
Not surprising to me, even though, and again, we'll see if he's here in a day.
Yeah.
Dom Jones scratches an itch the Browns really like, which is
size.
They love big press corners, and they love a specific brand of press corner. And I've broken this down before. Martin Emerson's athletic profile. He's tall. His top end speed is not great, but he's very agile. So he's got a pretty good short show and three cone. So even, and the thing, when Martin Emerson played really, really high level, it was not, he didn't get faster. It was because he was able to press and then adjust quickly to correct, to then cut off with his length and not get beat over the top by guys who were just faster than him. When the Browns claimed Khalif Halassi as a waiver claim,
Pete, did I lose you?
doesn't have great speed, but he's got agility. So it gives you some room for error. And the thing that if you watch Dom Jones in the preseason, he likes to hit people, which I'm always a fan of from DBs. So that aggressiveness sort of also works in his favor, that he's not afraid to put people on the ground. So, he was a guy, and I said this at the time, he kept getting cooked when they had no pads on. He was one where we'll see what happens when pads come on, because that's when a guy like Dom Jones is going to pick it up and be better. That seemingly has happened, but again, we'll see if he's going to be here in a couple days. And then there are a couple guys, along those lines where in that same little grouping. I'll be curious to see if the Browns try to get them back on the practice squad. Certainly, I think they want Lamarian James back on the practice squad. That's the one I think they're really hoping gets back. Chigozie Newsium, also out of Colorado State. The undrafted free agent who has length and speed and all these things and can do special teams. He's another one I think they like. So they've got this sort of grouping of these guys. But Dom Jones, right now, we'll see if this changes, is the one guy they have that fits the mold of the tall press corner. And you may see him, the Browns play the Bengals. Are they going to just roll with Greg Newsome and Denzel Ward, or potentially when they get a third receiver on the field, are they going to put Dom Jones out there to go press T. Higgins or something along those lines?
Yeah. So how about the nickel position for this team? Do you think it's going to be Newsome and they'll just work somebody else outside, or do you think it's going to be Harden? Do you think it's going to be Cam Mitchell?
Unless the Browns bring in somebody who's going to play on the outside, I assume Greg Newsome's going to be the outside corner. And again, gave you a scenario where I could see him play inside with Dom Jones potentially kicking out for a matchup that makes sense. Ultimately, I don't know if it's going to be Cam Mitchell or I don't know if the Browns know, honestly, if it's going to be one of those guys. But I think it's ultimately going to come down to Cam Mitchell and Miles Harden. Cam Mitchell drives me nuts with some of the leverage things he does. I pre-snap that I find very confusing. I liked Miles Harden as a corner coming out of college. Again, he's a prick. I love that in DB. Sort of built like a little bit of a safety, so I'm curious to see if they lean into that a little bit. But I genuinely, if you're asking me to do it today, who's the third guy who's going to step on the field against the Bengals at corner? I have no idea.
Yeah. I think that's how most of us do feel. How about the safety room keeping 5 guys? Is that a surprise to you? I know that you're a big fan of Donovan McMillan, and he showed out. He rightfully made the team. But, KZ and Rayshon Jenkins and stuff. And is Ronnie Hickman our starter?
He got to be. It has to be the starter. They wanted him to win that job. Whether or not he is good enough to be a true starting free safety. Again, another guy where they're sitting there hoping nothing would be greater than Ronnie Hickman takes this opportunity, runs with it, and they sign him to a contract extension, built their own, developed their own guy, and made it work. I'm not surprised they kept 5 safeties because the Browns love to play 3, and you get yourself in trouble if you only have 4. The only thing, I don't know if it's a surprise, it was just a choice. I think Ephraim Banda was willing to get in a fist fight to keep Christopher Edmonds on the team.
Yeah.
I think Ephraim Banda may physically go fight another team if they try to claim Christopher Edmonds and put them on their roster. I think he absolutely loves that kid and was fighting tooth and nail to keep him on the roster. I think they're desperately hoping, and I think they will. I do not think he's going to get claimed. I think he's going to end up on the practice squad. I think that's a guy he really hopes can sort of develop and maybe be, partway through the season, there's a point in time where he can take the job of either a KZ or a Jenkins. Rayshon Jenkins is the one that's sort of interesting. I loved him coming out of college. Mm-hmm. He was an absolute prick for the U. And he ended up being a 5th-round pick for the Chargers, and it just never really seemed to have the same impact that he did in Miami, where he was a good hitter, did a bunch of things decently well. But then, I'm sitting here and going, I don't know how about Rayshon Jenkins. Again, him and Dom Jones are like 2 rabid dogs just hitting people. And that preseason game was going, where's this guy been? I think his PFF grade was awful, so who knows? But I still sit here and go, I like guys who want to be physical at that position. So I'm interested in that. And then KZ is interesting because he has, Jenkins does as well. They both have experience playing a nickel safety position. KZ is much lighter. I don't even know if he's 180 pounds. He's more built like a corner and has more of a deep safeties mindset where I think he's a little bit better in that type of stuff. I think KZ gives you comfort. Not, if Ronnie Hickman was to get hurt, you could put Donovan KZ back there at free safety and feel great about it. That you have somebody competent to do the job. Mm-hmm. I'm sort of curious to see if he becomes like the third safety in sort of that Rodney McLeod type role, or if they lean into the young kid, with Donovan McMillan, he came in as sort of an unfinished product from Pitt. Ton of production as a tackler, not a whole lot of ball production, but a really good athlete, good size. Pat Narduzzi raves about him. Mm-hmm. And a lot of similar to Christopher Edmonds, they took him, and he was the same deal. Another guy, they don't necessarily play as athletic as they should be, and it's just, can somebody unlock that where they get the full package with him? And if they do, I think Donovan McMillan could do a whole lot of things for you, similar to Ronnie Hickman. But he's a guy I thought, along him and Aiden Huntington were the 2 guys I thought when they were signed had the best chance to make the roster. So I'm curious to see how they decide to utilize them.
How about Dustin Hopkins getting the old heave ho? How do we feel about that?
I mean, I think there was a palpable sense of dread every time he took the field at this point. I think the emotional baggage alone was enough to move on.
Yeah.
We'll see if Andre Schmidt ends up being the guy. But just from Andre Smith is taking the field to take a kick, maybe you're nervous and maybe you're not sure he's going to make the kick, but your immediate reaction is, oh God, here comes Dustin Hopkins. Like that, you can say that just from a fan standpoint. I bet that's a locker room feeling at this point.
I guarantee it's a locker room thing. And look, tip of the cap to him because he had a legendary run in 2023. It was absolutely amazing. Amazing.
Jim Brown's points record.
And he was dynamite from like 50 yards out. He was like dead eye. It all disappeared last year. And whatever. The bloom is off the rose, yada, yada, yada. Tip of the cap to him. But it's like you nailed it. It was in his head, and it's like you could see it on his face. Like you could see the lack of confidence in his face. You could see it in the team, man. And damn knows we felt it every Sunday. So I ultimately thought that this was going to happen or it should happen. I didn't know if the contract was going to prohibit that. Because they gave a decent deal, and they guaranteed the majority of it.
I mean, don't get me wrong. They're eating $2 million, and they paid him money for it on last year. I don't know what the Samson equivalent of hamstring is, but it seems like whatever he did to his hamstring just sapped any power he had in his kicking leg or whatever, or control or whatever it was, and just completely gone. But we'll see if Andre Smith can hold on to the job, or if they're going to, my suspicion is they're going to bring, at some point, they'll either bring in like a bunch of guys to compete or to have a kickoff or something and see if he holds it, or maybe there's some veteran they like that they're going to bring in. All I can say, and this is just how much of a difference it is. Every time I've seen Andre Schmidt kick the ball, it went between the uprights. Like small sample size, it's like 3, but it's 3, and they went through. So like
it's 3 in a row.
I mean, that's the thing, and we'll see where it goes. But like, that's enough. You can't keep taking 6s when you're supposed to get 7s, and you can't keep missing 3s. The Browns simply do not have that room for error. They lost games because of it last year, games they won in 2023 because of it. They aren't that team that can just roll down the field. And look, I would love nothing more than the Browns to be so good offensively that we just say, screw it.
It doesn't matter.
And we are just going 2-point conversion every time and just say, this is how we're living. But until that happens, they can't be trading 6. Again, it's one of those things where this past preseason game, Joe Flacco throws a touchdown to Harold Fannin. It's all great. And then it's immediately he goes out, pulls the kick wide, and it's immediately like, well, it's kind of cool that Harold Fannin caught a touchdown, but I don't feel
it takes the air out of the whole stadium. It changes momentum.
Immediately. It just it feels awful to miss those kicks. It's just genuinely brutal. So it's got to get better. But Andre Schmidt, no vowels, fine. Let's go for it if that's the case. Happy for Rex Sunahara, the pride of Bay Village, held on to his job, and then Corey Bojorquez is just an absolute god at punting at this point.
He's a stud, absolutely. How about the return game? I mean, DeAndre Carter seems like the guy that is, thought of as the return man, but Larvadain did it all preseason. Does Isaiah Bond offer any kick return upside? And do you think they'll kind of sprinkle him in there at all, or is that not?
I don't know that he's actually returned since high school.
Yeah.
So I would doubt it. One, I'd be afraid that if he actually, if there's an Aiden Huntington out there, that he would literally just spontaneously combust.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, DeAndre Carter is a complete unknown as far as I'm concerned. All I've seen is the last preseason game, and he was kind of meh.
Yeah.
A little bit indecisive. Didn't field the ball like super cleanly on one of the kicks. So from a general onlooker's perspective, you have no idea what DeAndre Carter does. You only know what he's sort of done through what reporters or whatever who have seen him practice do. And that's, I never hear anything about it. So all I've got to go on is Gage Larvadain looked pretty good at punt returner. in the times he does. At the very least, I would say he's fearless at it. He will catch the ball and try to do something with it. And the Caden Davis looked reasonably okay at kick returners. So I'm hoping that if DeAndre Carter is indeed here for week 1, that the reason he's here, and obviously, look, the rationale behind the signing is that DeAndre Carter, in the first year of the new kickoff, crushed it as a returner. Mm-hmm. So you have the new rules. He has some proof of concept that he's been good at it. So if he's going to be able to come out here and be a really, really good returner, okay, I get it. But I literally haven't seen him do anything to get me excited about it other than I can look at numbers and go, he was really good at it last year.
Yeah. Well, so out of as our initial, 53 for this season plays out, there are some surprises, some stuff that we can identify as problem spots, but it's as you hit on it when I texted you earlier today, it's just the initial one. It's not the final 53. There's plenty of moving pieces that are gonna, show themselves before before the Cincinnati game, let alone, the rest of the season. Speaking of that Cincinnati game, what are you looking towards for that game right now? Like what needs to happen for the Browns for this game to be competitive, let alone have the Browns have a chance to win?
The Bengals offensive line has to show up. That's it. I mean, I have no faith that they can protect Joe Burrow. None. Mm-hmm. They are literally dealing with an issue at guard right now. Cordell Volson, my hero, because he's never blocked anyone, is unfortunately out for the season. But they're literally trying to shuffle through, and he was at left guard. They've replaced him with I think their draft pick this year. So they got a rookie at left guard, I believe. Right guard is the one they are trying to sort out. Their right tackle has very little experience and has dealt with injury issues, including now. Like he's dealing with something. Orlando Brown Jr. cannot block Myles Garrett. So I don't know how that's going to work. Yeah. So if the Browns can just cover long enough, I think it got a real problem with that. And Joe Burrow is going to get brutalized just like he did in the preseason game. And I still can't believe that happened. Then offensively, look, the Bengals in the preseason gave up about 35 yards per carry. Can the Browns just do enough to keep the ball moving on the ground and control the ball to sort of shorten the game, keep it away from Joe Burrow, hopefully get them out of rhythm. Like hopefully you 3 and out, get the ball, control it, get down the field and score points and continue that over and over again. That would be great. 56-0. Let's go. But if not, if you can at least sort of keep them out of rhythm and keep the ball away from them and shorten the game from that standpoint, great. I don't know that the Bengals, they've just got Trey Hendrickson back, phenomenal player. I don't think he fixes their issues. I mean, I think he's a real problem for DeJuan Jones potentially, but I don't know that he fixes anything with the run game, which is ultimately where this thing's going to be decided for the Browns. So those are the two things. Again, as it so often is the case, at the line of scrimmage, both sides of the ball. Yeah, Joe Burrow is an infinitely better quarterback than Joe Flacco. They've got that big advantage. And then the other thing that I think works in the Browns' favor is Kevin Stefanski and whoever the hell he has on his staff have owned Zach Taylor from a scheme standpoint. Just absolutely destroyed him. Joe Woods, as defensive coordinator, absolutely ran circles around Zach Taylor. Jim Schwartz, certainly up to the task of beating up on Zach Taylor. Their defensive coordinator doesn't have any talent to work with. So Kevin Stefanski, I think, will be able to – the thing he's traditionally done with the Bengals is – which I think they're going to do a whole lot of based on what Kevin Stefanski's bag is and what has caused problems for the Bengals, is they do a lot of shifting formationally, create balance issues where the Bengals get caught misaligned and the Browns just run to where the problem is. And you go back to their old games with Nick Chubb, and it's just like, oh my God, they don't have anybody in the right spot, and he takes off for God only knows. So that's where I'm sitting here going, man, I think the Browns can steal a game here. But it all comes down to, can they run the ball enough? And obviously, before the whole Judkins thing happens, and maybe that's going to get resolved, you're still going to have questions as to whether he's going to be ready because of all the time he's missed. When Judkins was like the guy, I was sitting here going, man, I feel great about this matchup and the Browns being able to come in here and win, because I just think the Browns are a terrible matchup for the Cincinnati Bengals in that regard.
Yeah, agreed. And, you go back to when we tattooed him, week 1 of 2023. I want to say it was 23-3 or 27-3. Somewhere in that range. And this is a Deshaun-led offense that was pretty much terrible for the majority of the day. So if the defense shows up again and can control the line of scrimmage and keep Joe Burrow on his back and frustrated, I mean, that I feel like this is absolutely a winnable game for the Browns. I really do, especially if Flacco can protect the ball and they can, move it on the ground. That would, that's. How about
can the Browns cover enough
for
the Bengals defense? I think their secondary is actually pretty good. Those are things that are got to be, those are the other areas where I think there's a potential pressure point. The Bengals are the one team where I think they have enough weapons where the Browns legitimately might have problems in terms of coverage. But if Joe Burrow can't throw it because he's dead, then you're in good shape.
All right. Now, anything going on in the rest of the AFC North that has caught your attention? Any moves the Steelers made at cut downs or the Ravens? I mean, you got to keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Well, Steelers currently still have 4 quarterbacks. When everybody's sitting there going, oh, the Browns are going to have 4 quarterbacks, what are they going to do? The Steelers still have Mason Rudolph. They still have Aaron Rodgers. They still have Skylar
Thompson. You can't let go of Skylar Thompson. You see his numbers this preseason, Pete?
I thought Mason Rudolph was going to be gone, and he's still there holding on. So that part of it's interesting. Obviously with them, I think they're in a similar boat with the Browns where they're still looking at wide receivers, trying to get more help there. Tight ends are going to be a big part of them. And again, do they have enough offensive line help to do everything else? But defensively, they're really in really good shape. The one guy that they cut where, I know everybody's sitting there going, man, the Browns should sign Mike Hilton. If I wanted to get a younger nickel who I think could be really interesting is Beanie Bishop. The Steelers traded for Jalen Ramsey, and obviously he's going to be, basically that guy. But Beanie Bishop has been a pretty good nickel for the Steelers after moving on from Mike Hilton. They got him as an undrafted free agent at West Virginia. I would have liked to have signed him there. He had like 4 interceptions or something in a season. That was sort of the one move where I sit there going, I understand why they made the move, but that's the one where I sit there going, man, that's one where they could come back later and go, man, I wish we didn't let go of Beanie Bishop.
Yeah. Now, how about the Ravens? Because I'm in 2 places with the Ravens. On the one hand, I think it's the best roster in football, top to bottom. I think the Ravens are really, really good. But then on the other hand, I say to myself, and I said it last year, if they didn't win it last year with Lamar staying healthy and having that season, and the best closer in football staying healthy and having the season that Derrick Henry had, when the hell are they going to do it?
I think if you're the Ravens, I think you're hoping that the line's going to be better than it was last year. And yes, Derrick Henry crushed it. I don't know that you sit there and you go feel great about the offensive line, particularly their guards. If they can get better at that, that's going to be important. And that's not so much the regular season. That's going to be postseason when their offensive line needs to be really good. Secondary wise, I think they're in great shape. It's really, pass rush is the other one where you're sitting there going, is Kyle Van Noy going to continue to keep this up? seemingly he is Odafe Owe going to be better than he has been? It seems like he's sort of this unknown piece. And then, does Mike Green give them the thing that they've been wanting for that group for the last several years? Does he give them that dynamic edge threat? Kyle Van Noy has been very, very good. He's just not that type of guy. Does that sort of give them the missing piece that defense has been sort of waiting for? But to your point, yeah, I mean, it's if not now, when was sort of the feeling last year. How much better are they going to be? Are they going to be able to get as fortunate with injuries? Lamar Jackson has had the 2 healthy seasons in a row. Is he due for another one where he's going to get, a high ankle or something weird at some point during the season?
It just lingers. Yeah.
That just doesn't go away. And if he misses time, who's the backup? They've got what's his face? Cooper Rush, which
you could do a lot worse. You could do a lot worse.
Last year it was Tyler Huntley. I mean, they it's better, but it also changes your offense entirely. With that group, and if again you go back to the line, does Mark Andrews bounce back in a big way? Does Isaiah Likely take another step forward? Do they get more out of some of the receivers? Zay Flowers obviously had issues in the playoffs. Has been a good player. Does that group going to give you more? I mean, I think the Ravens are sitting there going, why can't we be better than we were last year?
Yeah.
But it's very easy to say that. We'll see if they can actually deliver on it. But yeah, I mean, I think the division is theirs for the short of, catastrophic injury. I don't see anybody else in their league from that standpoint.
Yeah. One move that they made that I feel like he's more of a name than he is a true, stud receiver anymore. I really like DeAndre Hopkins, and I think he's just a tough, good, strong receiver who's going to have a huge catch radius. He's going to make contested catches, and he's going to move the chains for him. I like his addition to any offense just to be a chain mover at this point in his career. But he's a big body. He's got a lot of range, and he catches the damn ball. And I think that would be, it's almost like a third tight end for them out there, because obviously Zay Flowers gives you the explosives, and they want Rashad Bateman to become what he hasn't really been able to consistently become. I just feel like Hopkins it's like a safety blanket for them that they don't have a wide receiver, and they haven't had a wide receiver in the longest time.
Yeah, I mean, I think DeAndre Hopkins works properly slotted. If you are saying that DeAndre Hopkins is your 4th option, I think you're loving life. Yeah. Like, if that's the 4th guy that they have to worry about, you're in great shape. And I agree with your assessment of him being sort of like a third tight end in terms of the body size. And like Lamar Jackson has generally done better with big bodied guys that give him a little bit room for error in terms of accuracy. Mm-hmm. And DeAndre Hopkins has been that guy. The question I'm going to have as we go through this is if he's the 4th and 5th option, is he going to be okay with that? Is he going to be okay getting, 3 balls a game, and then maybe at some point he gets a big load share? We'll see. But yes, I mean, but if you're asking him at this point to be like your 2nd option, I think you're in trouble. I just don't think he's got enough. But again, when you are an embarrassment of riches and you have him, then it could be good. Now the other question is going to be, is he, his game doesn't really he's lost a gear. I mean, there are gears that have fallen off of him. I don't know how much of that really changes much. So that's the other part where it's not like he was built on speed in the first place. So not having it's a huge detriment to him. Yeah. That might save him a little bit. But I don't expect a monster impact, but he doesn't need to. If he has a big catch every game or every other game that extends a key drive, then he's more than worth it for what they need.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And like I said, I feel like when you look at that roster top to bottom, it's just so strong. And especially in the important parts, a running back like Derrick Henry and a quarterback who is probably the least defensible player we've ever seen in NFL history. It's a wicked combo. And all those pieces in the passing game to complement those two, it's something special. It's going to be interesting to see how they maintain their health throughout the season, because those two were so good and so strong last year. Yeah, it's going to be a tough division. It's going to be I don't necessarily think it's going to be like a closely contested top spot, but man, 2 through 4 is completely up in the air for me. I feel like we're not far off of Cincinnati or Pittsburgh in the least.
Obviously, everything Pittsburgh depends on Aaron Rodgers, and can they protect him? Is he interested in potentially taking on contact anymore? Because if the answer is no, and they can't block for him, it's going to go quick.
Yeah.
Cincinnati, their defense is awful. You're asking Joe Burrow to basically just fix it.
Yes.
He has the ability to do that, but it's tough when you are asked to score 40 points a game. And I don't know how he's going to make it through the whole season. That part of it is worrying to me. I mean, that's the thing. You've got all 4 quarterbacks in this division have reasons to be worried about longevity, which could change the whole thing. But to your point, I kind of think the Browns are, if you want to say they're 4th, I can't really argue with you, but I don't think the Bengals are that much higher if they're in 3rd. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, if you think they're better than the Bengals, and I do right this second, I don't think it's a huge separation from them. And then, it's a pretty big gap to a fully healthy Ravens squad. So, is it a situation where, the Ravens comfortably win the division, and then nobody else from the division is in the wild card, and it's basically a mud fight at the bottom with one team trying to squeak their way in the playoffs? Or are we going to find ourselves in a situation where, it's
like
three playoff teams again?
Yeah.
I'm more inclined to think it's going to be Ravens and maybe one more team than it is the other way, just because I think some of the other divisions are better. But, once you get into the season and it starts going, that could change quickly, because if the Bengals defense is awful, for example, and everybody can sort of beat up on them, that could create some quick separation.
All right. Well, Pete, as usual, it's always a pleasure. This was a lot of fun. Look forward to doing it next Tuesday. And I want to thank everybody that stuck with us all night. Appreciate the OBR Streaming Network for having us. And one more time, if you guys haven't checked it out, head over to OBR.com. Check out all the exclusive access to insider forums like Ask the Insiders with Lane Atkins and Fred Greetham answering your questions there. Pete, always a pleasure, my man. I can't wait to do this with you next week, and we're going to figure out a name for this bad boy. We're going to get this thing going.
Yeah, well, when you decide to do some work and figure it out, we'll be all set. But until then, I look forward to it next week.
I'm lazy. I set the bar low for a reason, brother. You can't go after me about this. But hey, Pete, always a pleasure, my man. I'll see you next week. Browns fans, take it easy. Go Browns. Catch you guys later.